Welcome to the BuyBox Experts podcast. We bring to light the unique opportunities brands face in today's e-commerce world.
Hi, I'm James Thompson, one of the hosts of the BuyBox Experts podcast. I'm a partner with BuyBox Experts and the former business head of the Selling on Amazon team at Amazon, as well as the first account manager for the Fulfillment by Amazon program. I'm the co-author of a couple of books on Amazon, including the recent book, Controlling Your Brand in the Age of Amazon. Today's episode is brought to you by BuyBox Experts. BuyBox Experts takes ambitious brands and makes them unbeatable. When you hire BuyBox Experts, you receive the strategy, optimization, and marketing performance to succeed on Amazon. BuyBox Experts combines executive-level advisory services with expert performance management and execution of your Amazon channel strategy. Go to buyboxexperts.com to learn more. Before I introduce our guest today, I want to send out a big shout to the team at Disruptive Advertising. For off-Amazon advertising, Disruptive Advertising offers the highest level of service in the digital marketing industry. Go to disruptiveadvertising.com to learn more. Our guest today is David Glick, Chief Technology Officer for FLEXE.com, a nationwide firm that helps brands expand their warehousing and fulfillment capabilities. Prior to FLEXE.com, David held senior leadership roles at Amazon for nearly 20 years, including running the Amazon Transportation and Fulfillment Technologies team. During my time working at Amazon, I had the good fortune of working with Dave on fulfillment-related projects. I'm very pleased to have you on our podcast today as I pick your brain on the challenges that brands are facing with COVID, accelerating the speed with which logistics and fulfillment investments are needing to be made. Dave, welcome and thanks for joining us today on the BuyBox Experts podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Dave, for the benefit of our audience, remind me how it is we first met many years back at Amazon.
Yeah, one of the roles I had was being the technical advisor to Diego Piacentini, who was in charge of retail for international, everything but the US. Mm-hmm. And one of my jobs was to grow FBA adoption. And so the first thing I did was look for people who were being successful. And John Witham said, sports were really taking off and go talk to James Thompson. And so I knocked on your door and you were like, oh yeah, well, I just do this, this, and this. And then things grow. And it was like, I write a query looking for brands who are selling well as MFM, but there's no FBA offers. And I was like, hey, can you write that down and send it to me and I'll scale it up? And you're like, no, too busy. And so I like, okay, let me get my notepad out. And you went through it again. He said, this is a query I do. This is what I do after that. And I took it to the FBA team and I handed it to him and said, do this. And that became what we call the FBA cookbook, getting from 0 to 1 with FBA. And we use that internationally as well as in the US. So thanks. You were a big part of growing FBA, James.
It's very, very kind words. As with most things at Amazon, when you see a problem, you just figure out how to solve it, even if it's not elegant. And hopefully somebody else helps you make it elegant, and then you can scale the heck out of it. So let me start by asking you, because you just happen to have a PhD in physics, not something that most of my guests have. I'm going to start by asking you a physics question. If COVID has moved brands online faster and more extensively than they might otherwise have planned for this year, is Amazon acting as the gravity assist, helping slingshot a lot of these brands into e-commerce?
Well, the answer is yes. I don't know if it's actually a physics question, but it's a good analogy. If you think about what brands need to do, the first and foremost thing they need product, but then they need traffic.
Yes.
And all the traffic online is at Amazon. After that, you need fulfillment capabilities. And there's this program called FBA.
Right.
You need the ability to take money. Oh yeah, checkout by Amazon or just Amazon payments. And so, you think back, I don't know, it was 10 or 15 years ago, even pre-FBA, there was this guy, Tim Ferriss, wrote a book called The 4-Hour Workweek. And one of the things he talks about was, you call a manufacturer in China to make yoga mats, and you place an ad in the yoga mat or in the yoga trade rag at the end of the month and get, for $500. And then you figure out if you get demand, and then you have them shipped directly to a fulfillment house, and you want the fulfillment house to take care of customer service. But all of these things end up being something that FBA does and Amazon does for you. They provide, you don't have to put an ad in the trade rag anymore. You advertise on Amazon. You don't have to send to a fulfillment house or a CS house because Amazon does all that for you. So, when I was working in retail at Amazon, what we told our buyers, our vendor managers, is your job is to source product and get better terms from vendors. End of story. We will take care of the rest.
Right.
The same is true with merchants, right? You can live on the Amazon ecosystem, and your job will be sourcing products and getting them to Long Beach, where Amazon picks them up and sends them to FBA. So they can build a business in the box for you. There are problems, and I'm sure we'll discuss some of those. But
Right,
for the most
right.
part, it's the single easiest way to get your product off the ground.
So for brands that aren't selling on Amazon today but want to be online, what advice would you give them in thinking about how Amazon might impact the brand's online aspirations? To your point, some things will work, some things may not work. Where should Amazon fit into that idea that these brands now want to get online?
Yeah, and there's brands who are building their business from the ground up, and there's mega brands like Procter and Gamble and Kraft Heinz.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the businesses who are building from the ground up. There are Shopify and BigCommerce and some other shopping carts, and obviously Shopify has taken off, and everybody's saying this is the end all be all, and they're going to kill Amazon. Not everybody, a few people are, but in the end, if you go to Shopify, you have to create your own traffic. If you come to Amazon, you get to take advantage of Amazon's traffic.
Yes.
I've been a technologist for all my career, but I've been very closely linked to retail and then to operations at Amazon and elsewhere. And the number one thing that you need your product in stock, you need a good product, you need good reviews, you need pricing, but all of that doesn't matter if you don't have traffic.
Right.
And so Amazon's where the traffic is.
What's fascinating for some of the brands that we work with is that they have a long history of decent products. They show up on Amazon, and all of a sudden there's all these companies they've never heard of they're competing against. And many of these companies know how to play the Amazon game a whole lot better than these national brands do. And so they're having to learn Amazon just as much as they're having to learn new competitors that play the game a little bit differently. In the conversations that you have with brands, people say, "Oh, you worked at Amazon, you must know how this works." How do you give guidance to a brand that doesn't understand that Amazon the channel's played a little bit differently than every other channel?
Yeah, one of my friends, name's Kim Matheson, who's also ex-Amazon. She had said, "You need to think like an Amazonian," and I would amend that to say you need to think like the Amazon algorithms, because all of the buy box winning and the search ranking and all those things have nothing to do with Amazonians. They have to do with the algorithms at Amazon. And so when we worked together in FBA, what I found was that the people who succeeded well are the people who are saying, Amazon's going to change the rules on us. They're going to give us crappy tools to work with. But the people who are scrappy enough to jump over all of those hurdles did very well on Amazon. And it wasn't the mega brands. It wasn't the Nordstrom and the Gap. It was,
right.
My favorite story is these guys from New York who had, $20 in the pocket and bought some Atkins bars. They bought 2 boxes at $10 each and sold them for $2 a bar. And at the end, they had $30 in their pocket. So they bought 3 boxes, and they built sort of from $20, they built $1 million business.
Yeah.
But it was because they were scrappy, and they understood this isn't retail, this is Amazon, right? And you have to play by the rules of the Amazon, not by the rules of traditional retail.
So let's talk a little bit about the fulfillment side of the equation. In the conversations that you're having today at FLEXE with brands that are waking up to e-commerce, I suspect many aren't really set up with the right kind of logistics and warehousing capabilities to support this rapid growth of e-commerce that they may be experiencing. Two-part question for you. How should brands be thinking about e-commerce as a rapidly developing channel? And when should brands be investing in logistics and fulfillment themselves versus potentially outsourcing it to firms that do it full time?
Yeah, if you think about we'll switch from the little guys to the mega brands.
Yep.
And the Kraft Heinz's and the Procter and Gamble, and they several years ago said, "Hey, we need an e-commerce strategy." And the e-commerce strategy was like, we'll sell to Amazon. And the full truckloads coming out of Procter and Gamble's warehouse in Cincinnati and going to Walmart stores or distribution centers, going to Amazon's fulfillment centers.
Yep.
Those are well-worn paths. Recently, as over the statistic we always like to cite is over the last 10 years, e-commerce has gone to 6 to 16% market segment share. And in the last 10 weeks, it's 16% to 26%. So we've made about 10 years of progress in 10 weeks. And now it's kind of 6 months. But if you're at one of those companies and you're like, man, I think I need to get out of the, Amazon's turning into the dog and I'm turning into the tail. I need to have a direct relationship with my customers. How do I do that? And they're staring down a $10 million project, right? They're like, okay, well, I need to find if I need to compete with Amazon on ship promise, if I need to have a 1-day promise, that means I need 9, 10, 12 nodes in my network so that my inventory is close to my customer. And I've never done that before. And, if I go to a 3PL, traditionally, they're going to want a 5-year contract. They're going to want me to put some capital out to build rack. There's lots of expenses, a warehouse management system, license fee, and so on. And so, by the time, before you even ship a unit, you may have a $10 million project that you need to go get approved. What FLEXE is all about is debatchifying that process. So rather than having a 5-year contract, we work with 3PLs who already have existing space. And so you can have a month-to-month contract. And you can start with a single node. Say if you're Procter and Gamble and you want to ship into Chicago, you can start with a single SKU or a few SKUs, set up your website on Shopify or BigCommerce or wherever. Have Google Ads target just the zip codes you want to do same day or 1 day. Have a warehouse that's right there that can do that, and you can see if it works. And so instead of having a $10 million investment to see if something works, you're looking at a $100,000 investment. And so that's why we're excited, and we think we can help big brands stick their toe. Dip their toe in the water of this and then see the results before they have to scale up.
So what are some of the
part A or part B?
Well, let me ask a follow-up and I'll come back to part B in a sec. But if I'm a brand that's dipping my toe in this, what are some of the things that I'm likely to learn about going direct to consumer that I've never learned before? Because you give brands that flexibility, they may have to course correct when they say, before I go to 10 other nodes. What are some of those learnings that you're seeing brands gaining because they are able to try something out?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing again is, how do I get traffic? Like, are you used to going, James, to oldspice.com to buy your deodorant? No, you go to Amazon. Right. And so how do I drive traffic to this? And, can I have a consolidated P&G site or a consolidated Kraft Heinz site where I'm selling all of my branded products? And do people even know that those are my brands? So I think that's the front end. The back end is logistics is expensive. So, we've calculated based on Amazon shipped units and their logistics cost, and they pay about $5.30 per unit. That's their fulfillment CPU.
Wow.
And, they're the best in the world. And so if you're not Amazon, you're going to be paying $8 to $10 between inventory costs and fixed costs and variable costs. And so how do you get the right ASP? How do you get enough gross margin to afford that logistics spend? And the way I think about it is, if you're paying Amazon 15%, and for sellers, this is sellers, not brands, you're paying them 15% commission off the top, and then you pay them another 10%, 15% for FBA services, you're paying 25 to 30% of your revenue to Amazon. And so I would think about that as your budget to do your own direct to consumer. And so if you're at a $30 ASP, maybe you can spend $9 on shipping. If you're anything less than that, you're not going to be able to do it.
Right. So let's go back to, I am a brand, I am going direct to consumer. I recognize that I'm going to have to build some of these logistics and warehousing capabilities. What is the life cycle of a brand building its own logistics and fulfillment capabilities versus getting to the point where they decide that they best outsource that to somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's three ways to do this. The first is I'm going to do this in my in-house, and most people do that in their garage until, a small brand will do that in their garage until they're like, oh man, I'm spending all my time shipping and my garage is full and I can't source products. And then they say, I need a third party, 3PL solution. And, you can go to Amazon and that's pay as you go. It has its own set of problems. The most important one is that you're part of the ecosystem then, which is great and which is horrible. When I was at Amazon, we talked about the technology platform. You're screwed if you're on it and you're screwed if you're not.
Yes.
And so, which devil do you want to dance with? But then, your other option is go to a traditional 3PL. Traditionally, these have been high startup, high fixed cost. Again, what FLEXE, our business, is taking the fixed cost out of fulfillment and allowing you to have month-to-month contracts with no startup costs, all variable costs. And from technology side, I think of that similar to AWS or Azure, who allows you to pay for your servers as you go rather than buying your own services. And then if you take that another layer, you can start with a 3PL and you're fulfilling out of one node, say in Ohio, and you have a 3 to 5 day or 3 to 7 day shipping promise, which is fine to start. But lots of people want to do the experiment to see if faster shipping drives revenue. And it turns out Amazon already did that experiment over and over again. And every time they went from super saver shipping to 2-day shipping to 1-day shipping to 2-hour shipping, revenue's gone up and customer service contacts have gone down because people don't have time to ask, where's my stuff if it shows up that night.
Yeah.
And so once you get through I'm shipping from one node in Ohio. Sorry, you mind if I keep going?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
You start with your 3 to 7 day promise and you're like, okay, this is working. I have some more volume. You move to a 3-node network and you have New Jersey, Texas, and California or something like that. And you can do 2-day shipping to most of the country. And that you can work with 3PLs or, you can you figure out how to get 3 nodes set up and, that's hard and you can do manual inventory placement, but you can muscle through it. But if you want to get to 1 day, which is where, we believe the world's going and Amazon's going, you need like 12 nodes. And so then you're looking at how do I do my inventory placement? How do I contract for 12 different boxes and so on and so on. And that's where FLEXE can help you. And, and we can help you do your inventory placement and we can help you find these 12 different nodes that all look like one node, like one network to you because it all runs through the FLEXE technology platform. So
if I'm a brand and I start off as an Amazon seller that's using FBA completely for my business, very, very common situation, where might I still benefit from having a relationship with a warehousing or fulfillment company?
Yeah, I think, FBA is great, by the way. Don't get me wrong. It is the single simplest way to do your fulfillment, from low scale to medium scale and even to large scale. And there's some drawbacks to that. One is that they're going to charge you $90 a pallet during Q4 to store product there. And they're having a big capacity shortage this year, just like everyone else. And so, what we're working with them to do is to build staging nodes outside of Amazon's inbound cross docks and outside of their fulfillment centers. So if you bring in 6 containers from China, instead of taking those 6 containers and dropping them off in Amazon's building and paying $90 a pallet, we have space that's right down the street within 25 miles. So you can store 5 of those containers worth of inventory in our node, paying $11 a pallet.
Yes.
And then when you deplete your inventory at Amazon, you call your truckers and say, bring me another 10 pallets. And so you're paying only for what you need. And that saves you money as well as makes Amazon happier because they can use their expensive robotic outbound capacity to do expensive robotic outbound things, not to store your back catalog and store your excess inventory. So I think that's one use case where having having some support from an outside warehousing company is good. And the second is, we saw in March and April, that Amazon shut its doors to non-essentials.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Amazon gets to do what Amazon wants to do. It's the Amazon algorithm, right? And so if you are completely dependent on FBA and they shut their doors, your revenue is zero because you don't get revenue until it ships. Having a backup plan, with a third-party logistics firm is probably a good idea.
So when you think about what Amazon has had to go through in 2020 and building out more warehouses, but nowhere near as many warehouses as they could have filled. When you look at what you've seen in the past through your experience directly at Amazon, what do you anticipate Amazon's going to be doing in the next year to continue to build out capacity? Is it just going to be build, or is it going to be continue to tweak the algorithms and limit people on what they can send in? Depending on what they do, there's opportunity for a company like yours to be able to capitalize on the need for better warehousing or better logistics.
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, they will build, and like they are building. My first project in 1999 was building out warehouses, and we built 5 in a summer, and we thought that was unheard of. We added 3 million square feet of warehouse space in one summer. No one had ever done that before.
Yeah.
And now that's like Tuesday at Amazon.
Yeah.
And they'll stand up 5 nodes in a week. And so they're going to continue to do that, and they're going to continue moving closer to the customer. We've seen an announcement that they're going to build 1,000 forward deployed nodes. What I would expect is that as their capacity is constrained, they're going to start thinking in a more sophisticated way about what they'll bring into their warehouses. Because before, it was an annoyance to have dead inventory in their warehouses or have more weeks of cover than was needed. Now it's critical to the supply chain of the country to keep that inventory light. And so I would expect that either through us or they may insource it as well. They will have staging facilities which are much lower capital, which are just a big box, and you can replenish out of them into the IXD. If you think about Amazon's warehouses 15 years ago, receive and ship were from the same warehouse. With the inbound cross docks, the IXDs, they basically moved the receive process out, and so they have specialized warehouses to do receive and cross dock. And then you have the FCs are optimized for fulfillment for outbound. And so you can imagine that you turn that into 3 different types. You've got receive, you've got storage, and you have outbound is the next evolution.
So you talked about FLEXE basically co-locating warehouses near Amazon fulfillment centers. How does that process actually work? If I'm sending product into FLEXE, do you have receiving slots already set up with Amazon to be able to deliver stuff on a very short-term notice? How does that work, especially in Q4?
Yeah, so we think about how do we get it sort of from the port of Long Beach into our warehouses, and we have pre-sourced warehouses with capacity available that you can, at relatively short notice, stand up, within a few weeks, maybe even within a few days. You can bring inventory there and cache it there. Over time, we may do something with Amazon Transportation Services, but today, the move from our warehouse into the IXD is, traditional. Call your favorite trucker, see if they can pick up, and have them negotiate a dock appointment with Amazon.
So
it would be super cool if we could get it all linked up, as you said, with pre-sourced dock appointments and so on.
There's not a lot of receiving slots available, and quite frankly, you could wait for 2 or 3 weeks for that to happen. So recommendations that you would make to brands, not just this Q4, but any Q4 in an Amazon fulfillment center system where delays are in place, and as of this year, you can max out the amount of inventory you can send in based on Amazon's algorithms. But if Amazon's algorithms aren't right, you're going to run out of stock, and the delay is going to be Amazon actually letting you send more product in. How do you circumvent that? How can FLEXE help with that if you're fighting the same problems getting receiving slots to be able to bring that new inventory back into the warehouse?
That's a great question. I would go back to what we talked about at the beginning. like think like an Amazonian, not even think like an Amazonian, think like an Amazon algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what does that mean? Again, the people who do really well are super scrappy and understand the algorithms. So maybe you start reserving slots out into the future because you're going to need them. One of the things we think about is, it's good to be planful, right? It's good to plan ahead, but it's super important to be agile as well. And so what Flex gives you is agility, which means, when the slot opens up, I don't know if it was you or someone else who gave me this example of, on Tuesday, I could send 200 units in. On Wednesday, I could send 200 units in. And then on Thursday, I could send 10,000 units in.
Yep.
Because the algorithm flipped a bit or there was capacity available. And so you better know that on Thursday, you better send freaking 10,000 units in because, the algorithm is allowing you to do that. And so if you're 1 hour away from the warehouse, 25 miles away, you're much better placed to be agile and get those units into the warehouse rather than having to haul them across the whole country. And by the time you get there, the warehouse is full.
So talk to me about the agility as it relates to distance that you're having to travel to the warehouse. When I, as an Amazon FBA seller, when I set up an FBA shipment, I have to indicate where I'm shipping from. Amazon will make the decision as to where they want you to ship it into. Just because I happen to be 25 miles away from a location doesn't mean Amazon's going to pick that location. So based on your experience, both at Amazon and outside of Amazon, how do I actually be more agile when I can't anticipate exactly where Amazon's going to tell me to ship product?
You're asking the hard questions now. One of the ways to do that is, we have West Coast nodes and East Coast nodes that are outside of each of the IXDs. Right now we have 2 of them, but we're planning to scale that to ideally put one outside of each of Amazon's nodes. The problem with that, of course, is then you're splitting your inventory and you may raise your inventory cost. You instead of like guessing right or guessing wrong where Amazon will want you to ship it to, you are sort of hedging your bets, and so you'll
always be wrong on big quantity. You'll never be completely wrong. You'll just always be a little bit wrong.
Yep. And to tell the truth, I haven't spent a ton of time thinking through what that algorithm should be.
Yes.
But I would expect that between us, we should put our minds together, and understand exactly what the algorithm does, and think about how we work the system.
We've have a number of clients this fall who, as they've been doing their planning, we've been saying to them, you need to be in a position that you can do small package shipment on a moment's notice, just like you talked about your 200 units, 10,000 units. And it's extremely challenging for larger brands to have that ability because they too have to do inventory planning and be able to say, we may have another channel that needs 10,000 units. And so if it's unsold today, and tomorrow it is sold by, into Walmart.com or into some physical retailer, it's hard to be in a position to accommodate Amazon when Amazon doesn't smooth out the levels with which they're allowing you to send product into the warehouse. And we all know what happens in terms of being penalized if you're out of stock on Amazon. It's a very hard problem to solve, especially this year when demand for products on Amazon are likely to be sky high, much higher than anybody even anticipated. I'm looking at what's going to happen when middle of December, UPS and FedEx hit their cutoffs for ground shipments arriving on time for Christmas. I would expect consumers are going to flock to Amazon because Amazon is in a better position to do last mile delivery by the 24th. Oh my gosh, a whole bunch of very big brands are going to run out of stock and have absolutely no likelihood of being able to replenish in the week to 2 weeks before Christmas. It's not a question. Time. It's just sort of, where do we go from here? Because it's kind of crazy. It doesn't seem like a sustainable model every year. And hopefully, next year, people can go back to physical stores because COVID is resolved. But there'll always be something that creates that much more demand for Amazon. I remember, 8-9 years ago when I was at Amazon, I was involved with Amazon having some of its warehouses completely full. And we were dishing out 5 units of inventory for you and 10 units of inventory for you. And sellers saying, but I have 1,000 units to send in. Well, why are you giving me 5 units? What am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah, maybe the answer is I always tell my friends, like, you always want to get credit when you don't need credit. So you go get a line of credit on your house or something,
Yeah.
because when you need it, it'll either
Yeah.
be too slow or they won't give it to you. And so, it may mean that, like, you change your strategy to, instead of cache your inventory near Amazon's warehouses or at your own, you have more safety stock at Amazon than you want to, and it's just going to cost you some more money. The other thing you mentioned, maybe Walmart needs this inventory, or maybe Target needs this inventory. We talk about late binding, right? Dedicating, anytime you have to dedicate inventory to specific channels, you're becoming less efficient. And
Yes.
so the longer you can wait to make that decision, the better off you're going to be. That, by the way, that's sort of antithetical to what I just said, which is maybe cache more inventory in Amazon's warehouse. But it may be that the cost of inventory, like the cost of lost sales, is your biggest cost.
Yep.
And so if you have to spend some more money on having a little more inventory in stock, both at Amazon and near Amazon and away from Amazon, it's probably a good choice right now.
So let me ask you, shifting gears here a little bit, are there any up and coming technology firms or solutions that you've recently seen that brands should be thinking about incorporating into their overall Amazon strategy? Or maybe we'll be even more broad than that, their overall e-commerce strategy?
Yeah, I mean, if you look around the Seattle ecosystem and broadly around the worldwide ecosystem, but there's a lot in Seattle. You have people like buy box experts who can help you figure this out. Or for 1P products, there's PackView, and then there's bobsled marketing and Commerce IQ, which works with enterprise brands to do their ad optimization spend. So there's a whole cottage industry of working the Amazon algorithms. And a lot of it's ex-Amazonians who live in Seattle, but lots of it's worldwide.
Yep.
And so those are the four that pop to mind for me.
Is there something other than logistics and fulfillment that you would recommend that big brands be thinking about investing in, or at least researching, before they make that jump in direct to consumer on Amazon?
On Amazon or off Amazon?
Let's talk about on Amazon. I'm a brand that doesn't sell on Amazon. I know I need to be on Amazon. We've talked about logistics. We've talked about warehousing. You just mentioned, agencies that do account management, advertising, and so on. Are there other types of services that you have seen brands forget to tackle? They get into Amazon and realize, oops, I don't have reverse logistics, or oops, I don't have certain types of software integration. Are there big aha moments where you realize, oh gosh, I got to tell brands, you need to look at these things too before you jump in?
Certainly the ad spend optimization and SEO on Amazon, again, back to the beginning, we talked about traffic. All of those are super important. Another one, again, my friend Kim mentioned this, and I'm stealing this from her, is data quality. Like, do you have the right dimensions on your product? Is your detail page pretty? Is it what we call A+ detail page? I'm sure you can hire someone to help you design an A+ detail page, or Amazon will probably sell you their SVS services to get a great detail page. But what we found is, when you've been shipping to the same people for many years and you kind of got the same products, you've been sloppy on your item data quality. And so there's probably 10% of all SKUs that we get that have 1 by 1 by 1 dimensions and weigh 1 pound. And and so we, in our item master, we need the right dimensions because we need to pass that to FedEx or to UPS. Amazon needs the same because they need to manifest it, and they need to cube out, they need to figure out what kind of cube it's going to take. And so, I've asked the team to do call it a 1 by 1 by 1 audit, where you run a script every day and look for all the items in our item master that has 1 by 1 by 1 dimensions, and go back to the brand and say, hey, you need to give us the right dimensions, or we'll measure it ourselves. But and then obviously, having ugly pictures, Amazon has very stringent, or used to have very stringent things where you have a white background and so on. Those nice pictures drive demand, and more information and customer reviews. People trust products with more reviews, both high reviews and then just any reviews. And so, think through yourself as a customer. What do you like? Well, I want to buy from a seller who's sold this a lot, right? And they don't have 10 reviews, who may have been by, people from China who were hired to make them. They've got 10,000 reviews.
Yes.
And, they're 4.5 stars, and you have some 1-star reviews, but most of them are 5 stars. And so managing your reviews, managing your feedback is super important as well.
I want to finish our discussion today by asking you a question about your transition out of Amazon. When I worked at Amazon, it was a never-ending sprint for me. But working in an e-commerce focused startup has got to be another frying pan, hot and full of excitement. What have been the changes that you've had to make as you've moved out of an Amazon rat race and into an entrepreneurial e-commerce rat race?
I think about people ask me this a lot, my response is usually it's very much the same, and maybe it's because I came in a high enough leadership role that I could bring my own culture with me. But you have to hire great people. You have to manage performance on people who aren't so good. You have to invest in coaching and developing those people. You have to have high standards. We can actually get into the Amazon leadership principles and say, yes, disagree and commit is important, and bias for action is important.
Yes.
I would say not that everybody needs to be Amazon, but one thing that working at Amazon did is it was very clear what is good and what is bad, and what we like and what we didn't like. And in fact, it probably, it led to people a very homogeneous set of people and characteristics did well there, and others didn't do so well. And whether that's good or bad, we won't debate. With this startup, you have a much more heterogeneous set of people, and we have our culture. We want to be, in addition to being successful and growing fast, we want to have a very inclusive environment, and have people feel good about what one of my engineers said is treating the whole person, as opposed to just the fingers on the keyboard. And at Amazon, I felt like, and stop me if I'm going too far, but I felt like we selected for people who were very happy if they could achieve things, and mostly everything else didn't matter that much. You achieved things, you got promoted, you got a comp bump, and the stock went up, and everybody was more or less happy with that. When you have diversity of thought and diversity of ethnicity and all those things, and try to be inclusive, you do have to interact with people in a different way, and you have to think about your messaging. And it's not like, oh, I'm going to yell at you and you're going to respond. It's how can I make the same points but do it in a kinder, I don't know if it's less aggressive is the right term, but in a way that is super respectful and not mean-spirited. Not that Amazon was disrespectful or mean-spirited, but there was a balance.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was a fast-moving place, and I'm asked the question also. What was it like to work at Amazon? And my biggest takeaway was it wasn't a place where people had a lot of time to stop and talk about the whole person. Just as you said, there's no finish line to anything, and so you simply say, well, I'm fine, but let's keep moving. We got to keep moving. There's another deadline. There's another growth target we need to hit. It's it is what it is, and there's a time and place to leave Amazon, but there's also a wonderful experience that left behind by having worked at a place like Amazon. So, Dave, I want to thank you for joining us today. For those of you interested in learning more about FLEXE, please visit flexe.com. That's FLEXE.com, as shown on Dave's t-shirt. Dave, thank you again for joining us today on the BuyBox Experts podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And now to finish today's podcast, I'd like to share some final thoughts. For third-party sellers to be successful on Amazon, a critical lever will be soliciting feedback from customers. We at BuyBox Experts are really big fans of the team at Ecom Engine and its tools that help Amazon sellers to simplify the process of messaging customers of Amazon orders. To learn more, go to ecomengine.com. And with that, I want to thank you for listening today, and I look forward to joining you next time on the BuyBox Experts podcast.
Thanks for listening to the BuyBox Experts podcast. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web, and we'll see you next time.